Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, in the room and on Zoom. It's a great pleasure to welcome you tonight to the penultimate of the World in 2050 series. And we've had quite a long journey to get to technology and innovation, which I will talk about in a minute. But before we start, just a couple of things for both the online audience as well as people in the room. As usual, we're doing a poll tonight as to what the audience think of technology and innovation in 2050. So you've got a couple of minutes or so to go to the QR code, use your mobile phone, get the QR code or go to slido.com and put that number in, 3050124, and then you can take part in the poll. Now, you will probably get a screen saying the poll isn't active yet. It won't be active until I activate it with the first question, so don't worry about that, but have your phones ready. So that's the first thing to mention. Now, the most important thing for the people in the audience here physically is the fire alarm drill. Now, in my too many years I care to remember at the BLSI, there's never been a fire alarm go off during an evening talk. And I'm sure it won't today. However, should it go off, I need you all to form an orderly queue, go down the stairs from where you came up, go through the front door, turn right, go to the end of the road and turn right again and assemble at Chapel Green. And then we can make sure that everybody is out of the building. So that's that. That's all you need to remember for the online audience, for the audience in the room. And please keep your questions to the end of the presentation. As far as the online audience is concerned, there are three ways you can ask questions. The first one, and probably the easiest, is to put your observations and questions into the chat room. And then I'll pick those out a little bit later for David to answer. Alternatively, not before, but by the time we get to the Q&A question session, you can unmute and show your screen. And currently Steve Williams has already got his video screen active. If you could take that off, please, Steve, for the duration of the presentation, that'd be much appreciated. But then at the Q&A session, please show the video, unmute and ask your question. And alternatively, you can raise your hand electronically in Zoom. So that's really it as far as the admin is concerned. So now we come to today's main event. And as I alluded to earlier, this is going to be the 7th talk in the World in 2050 series. So far, we have had a real good canter journey across all the different dimensions of what the world in 2050 may look like. And they weren't speculative. They were actually based on something, a time horizon of about 27 years, between 2023 and 2050. So most of what we've heard is actually already in progress. It will just culminate in 2050. And the same is true for much of the technology. Some of this technology that will lead the world in 2050 is already being developed as we speak. So I think that was the main reason why we wanted to have the time horizon of 2050. So it wasn't just completely speculative futurology, it was actually grounded in reality. And so far, we kicked off the season with Hamish McRae, who wrote the book, The World in 2050, who gave us an overview of the terrain in all of its dimensions. The second talk then was by Barrett Coppelian from PricewaterhouseCoopers, who gave us a talk about the global economy. We then had a talk by Eunice Lowe about climate change and the effects of climate change. From there, we went to Victoria Ward to talk about society in 2050 and how we will work, live and play. So that was interesting. We then went back to the environment. We then went to politics and governance by one of David's colleagues, Christian Chris, who gave us a talk about global politics and governance in 2050, before returning to Lisa Stanzi from the OECD to give a talk about environmental challenges. And all of that has now taken us to technology and innovation. So we've heard lots about the problems, about what might happen in 2050. And obviously technology and innovation and artificial intelligence are always positioned as something that may actually be part of the solution to some of the problems that we will encounter over the decades to come. So it's a great, great pleasure to have David Born from Roland Berger with us today via live stream. The office is based in Frankfurt. I thought he had a picture of Berlin behind him. He tells me it's actually Frankfurt, but he's actually talking to us from Munich tonight before he's going on holiday to Switzerland. Now, David has got a long history at Roland Berger, but he got his master's degree at the University of Stockholm and at the University of Constance. And then he did his PhD at the University of Bern. He's worked at the European Parliament and also in Berlin before joining Roland Berger, and he's now a director at Roland Berger. And we're all waiting for him to give us an insight in terms of what technology and innovation will look like. Before we get started, I'm just going to do the poll, and now hopefully everybody will have got the QR code going. Okay, good. So the voting is already happening with this question. More advanced technology results in a better standard of living for all, inequality, machines doing the jobs we don't want to do, or job losses. So we've got 27 people already on the poll, and it seems to be broadly positive, although 30% of people are indicating they might lead to inequality in job. So it's probably so I think it is probably a positive overall with some negative around inequality and job losses. So we'll stop there and we go to the next question. No? There you go. Okay, so the next question is, technology advances should be regulated and monitored, or left to market forces to decide what we want and need? Okay, 19 people, 27 people have voted now. Now that is interesting, isn't it? That's extreme. When we come to artificial intelligence specifically, that will be very interesting to see how that might change. But actually, only 14% think it should be left to market forces, which have actually been driving most of the advance in technology rather than regulation. So again, we'll come back to that afterwards. We'll rerun the poll, by the way, at the end of the evening, just to see whether people have changed their mind. And then finally, artificial intelligence will be a force for positive change, an existential threat to humanity, ruling the world, or a tool for humanity to use for positive and negative ends. Okay, we've got 25 people voting so far. Okay. Okay, I think we've got it's up to us answer. Yeah, but that's good. To some extent, that's good because it's up to us as individuals and groups to decide how artificial intelligence progresses. And I think some of the ethical considerations David will bring out. So if I stop the screen now. Good, David, I've done the introduction for you already, and I think it's very clear that we've never had so many people on the poll on any of the previous talks. So we've had 38 people in total voting on this. You saw the answers yourself, David, and obviously everybody is really waiting and to see what you've got to say. So please put your hands together for David Bourne.
Yes, thank you very much, Andreas. Thank you all, the audience in the room and the online audience, for attending me and us this Friday evening for this little journey to the future. Don't worry, the screen is intentionally black. You will see something in a minute. Before we dive into technology and innovation in the year 2050, I want to give you a bit of an idea how we actually come to the ideas and the slides and the information that I show you, because like the fire alarm going off or not going off, the future is, of course, unpredictable. And often you hear that people state that currently we are living in very, very challenging times, which basically mean the future has never been so unpredictable than today. Actually, I would doubt that. I just would say we have more knowledge. So we always hope to get a better grasp of what lies ahead of us. But give me a second. What we often experience also is that when we are trying to make sense of the future, that we look at the past, which is actually not that bad an idea, because it tells us some things, but it cannot tell us everything. And so we basically have no other option left than to embrace the unknown and to go on the journey to the future. But of course, there are also tools that help us to understand and to basically build a frame how we venture into the future. You might remember this gentleman. It's Donald Rumsfeld, and he was quite famous when he was talking about the known knowns and the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns, to make clear what actually is important when you're in a ambiguous or in a VUCA world. So what we try to do with the trend compendium that I show you is basically using known knowns, so things we know that we know about, to understand things that we know are uncertain, but we know that they might happen, like the fire alarm. We can put like a probability on that. And of course, there are unknowns, things we simply don't have on our map of the future, which we don't expect. And those are actually the interesting ones. But to really understand where these might be coming from, we should first really understand what we know, which things we know are uncertain, and then we can basically get an idea of what else might happen. Now, this is, of course, not a thing that Roland Berger has invented. The Trend Compendium is our invention, but talking about megatrends is not our invention. I think it is fairly attributed to this gentleman, John Naisbitt, who wrote, I think in the 80s or 70s, not quite sure, this book on megatrends, and it was a long time New York Times best-selling book. Now, the thing is, when you're talking about the future, you can be wrong. And I want to explicitly state that I'm not here to tell you what will happen because I know better. I don't think I know better. It's simply that I have had the privilege, together with my team, to take some time and look into some of the things we know to get an understanding of what we might not know for the future. You might know this quote. It's one of these very famous wrong predictions, like the records executive who told the Beatles manager that the Beatles have no future in show business, or a bit more recent example, Steve Ballmer, the boss of Microsoft back then, predicting no market share for the iPhone. And I think there are many more. Like I think there was a king in Germany who said the car will have no future. And I think also, who was it? Was it Bill Gates who said no one will be using the internet? I'm not quite sure, but you get the picture. So we can be wrong. Having said that, I'm happy to present you our very fresh Trend Compendium 2050, which shows 6 megatrends that will determine our future. And what is a megatrend? A megatrend is actually something that is stable over time. It does not change, and it helps you to guide you through the VUCA world of daily business. We have been doing this Trend Compendium for over 50 years now. I think this is, let it be the 5th or 6th edition. I haven't counted. And this summer, we did a little exercise. We built a slide where we showed all the trends, the mega trends that we had in the Trend Compendium since 2007. And they are, well, and it would have been a bad outcome for me because I haven't been with the company since 2007. I'm with the company since 2015. And so, of course, I asked, hey, actually, what have been our mega trends like 15 years ago? Totally different ones, because that would have been a defy the purpose, because we always claim mega trends should be stable. But, and that gave me even more trust in the product, we really pick almost the same megatrends. There are little variations in the subtrends we pick, and of course, we also arrange them differently. Yeah. But what we almost always do is that we start with people and society. And now in the most recent version, politics and governance have moved a bit to second place. But in the end, these trends are stable. Now today, we are not going through all these trends. You've already, or some of you, I know the audience is not the same as 2 weeks ago, when my colleague Christian talked about politics and governance. But today I'm asked to talk about technology and innovation, which is in this Trend Compendium megatrend number 5. And also as a bit of an editorial remark, you'll find most of these slides on our webpage. Quite freshly this week, we published our Trend Compendium. So far, we have published our compact version of the Trend Compendium. For this speech I have, for this presentation, I have added some extra information, which is not yet in the compact version. So be patient. In a few weeks, we will also publish a deep dive only on technology and innovation. We will do deep dives on each of the 6 megatrends, and then you can download that as well. Another editorial remark, as this is a presentation, I've added the slides. The version that we have published, that you can download, contains also explanatory text on most of the slides. But as I don't want you to read, but I want you to look at pictures, get the big picture, and listen to what I say, I just threw the text away for this presentation. So don't be puzzled if the version you download for a weekend lecture will be a bit different. So what are the subtrends within our trend technology and innovation? I'll first be talking about the value of innovation. Andreas has already pointed to one thing which most of us rest our hope on. It will help us to solve upcoming challenges and current challenges. Then I'll be giving a glimpse into frontier technologies. Among those, of course, artificial intelligence, talk of the town everywhere. And which leads us quickly, as the last question already said, how will humans and machines interact, and how will it change because of artificial intelligence? Now let's start our little journey into the future with the value of innovation. Now, before we talk about innovation, what actually is innovation? It seemed in the beginning, it seemed clear, innovation must be something new, it should be maybe something good. But what really differentiates innovation from an idea is that innovation is an idea turned into a product, a business model, by adding value to an idea. So innovation is more than just an idea. And it has basically three elements, which you see here, that it adds something new regarding configuration, experience, and offering. I tried to go today when I prepared for this, I went through it on the example of Facebook, which is on the one hand quite recent, and on the other hand established enough so that most of you will be familiar with it. And actually, I think what was new? What was the innovation in Facebook? I think it was a new channel, a new service. It turned into a brand. It was really new regarding customer engagement, network, and structure. And it was only later on, I would say, it was a business model. I don't know. I still remember when everyone said, yeah, it's Facebook is great, but they'll never earn money with that. Especially in the beginning, they had some trouble making money on the mobile version of it, because in the beginning it was less established to display advertisements on the online app of Facebook. But they made that quite well, and have now transformed to Meta, and are now currently challenging Elon Musk, X, formerly known as Twitter, with a new, what is it called? Not Threads. I think Threads, yeah. So this is innovation. And why is it important? Innovation is important because it does help us. This is, I think, a really, really great chart. You see, what do you see? On the x-axis, you see how a country performs on the Global Innovation Index. This Global Innovation Index is built by the World Intellectual Property Organization, and it consists of different things, mainly R&D intensity, patents, and so forth. And on the y-axis, we have GDP per capita. So basically, we now see how are human well-being, and GDP being a very good measure for human well-being. It correlates almost 100% with the Human Development Index. So GDP, in spite of people saying GDP doesn't measure how happy people are, maybe not, but it tells you how their living conditions are quite well. And it shows that the innovative strength of economies and human well-being are strongly interconnected. There are some outliers here, where you see, for example, Qatar is not super innovative, but has a high GDP per capita, but that's clear, they have raw materials. Luxembourg and Ireland have a special business model as being like Ireland, where in the case of Luxembourg, a lot of financial institutions, Ireland, both financial institutions and internet companies are using. We also have our own innovation index, we at Roland Berger, together with the German Industry Association, the BDI. It is not shown here because it comprises just 35 economies, and here we have a lot more. But the picture, by using that, is the same. It even gives you a bit more details on how sustainably different economies are, and it gives you also a picture of where the different economies are regarding key technologies. So, who actually pushes innovation? Actually, I have changed slides a bit for this presentation, because in our standard product, we first talk about the efforts from different states or economies, nations, to push R&D and innovation. But drivers of innovation are, on one hand, absolutely like publicly funded research. That's true. But then really turning ideas, turning basic research into products, into innovation. This is what companies do. And you also see in the innovation index that economies that link basic research and applied research and company R&D and intertwine that closely, especially when they can form clusters on specific industry sectors, that they are most successful. Like in the most successful and most innovative country relative to size in our innovation index is actually Switzerland, because they have a very, very close collaboration they have between science and between academia and business. They have very good academia and strong business, and this builds a very good framework for successful innovation. Especially if you know that pharma and biotech is the most R&D heavy industry, and they are focused, among others, in Switzerland. You see that even automotive is a bit well, not a bit, but a lot lower, but still, how much they invest into research. Now, I mentioned it. This is the slide which in the usual presentation comes before the companies. I chose to switch it because I think let's first look at who drives it. But of course, national economies play a role here. It's of course, especially we look here, what have we seen here on the left, the US Chips and Science Act. We have the EU Chips Act. China is pushing semiconductor research and builds it up. This is actually both an example of how economies drive innovation and new technology. At the same side, it's also a sign how nations and geopolitics makes innovation worse. Because all these things, the US Chips Act, the EU Chips Act, they are all quite recent. But chips are not. We have semiconductors. We are using them since years. Why is it relevant currently? Yeah, because of geopolitics. Basically, we in Europe often think geopolitics entered the stage of business like in 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine, but actually it started in 2018 when Trump basically started a trade war between the US and China. So when you look at the Pacific, this is not a very new phenomenon. And this also increased the pressure because the Pacific trade war is mainly fought via tech bans. So all regions suddenly have an interest in becoming less dependent on other regions when it comes to chips, which unfortunately drives up costs. Because what you see here, like US investing 250 billion, EU investing 43 billion, China 143 billion. Someone has to pay for that. And it's the taxpayer, basically. And unfortunately, also, it will increase costs for chips. But after all, we're living in the world we can only partly shape. Now let's take a look at what technologies are frontier technologies. This is not a Roland Berger list, but this is a list by the United Nations Commission on Trade and Development, and they come up with these frontier technologies. And what you see here is basically the market size. The left bar is the market size in the year 2020, and the right bar is the market size in the year 2030. And the number below indicates how much it increases. What I find interesting, we have here 5G, which will increase by more than 100 the market size. But that's also quite clear because in 2020, 5G was just introduced, and by 2030 it will be at the peak, and we expect 6G actually to be introduced around that time. So it's actually something that will shrink after that, but of course 6G will be an even bigger market. Then when we look at the, wait a second, I think, let me give the laser pointer. Yeah, I hope you see the laser pointer. You see these breaks? Yeah, these basically mean that the picture was not big enough for this bar in the bar chart. And where do we see the use of this? It's one the topic of AI, which we'll talk a bit about in a few minutes. And of course, the industrial or the Internet of Things, which also includes the industrial Internet of Things, which is of course something which is still not fully there, and where there are still huge potential. Now, also, what this report from the United Nations do, they also differentiate between different types of frontier technologies. We have here, which they label Industry 4.0 frontier technologies and the green and renewable energy frontier technologies. But we should also be very clear that those, of course, intersect. For example, you can use, let's say, parcel delivery via drones is less carbon intensive. So it's both an Industry 4.0 technology, and it's also a green and renewable energy frontier technology, so to say. We are, of course, also have here technologies where everyone hopes that the market size might even increase more. When you look, for example, at electric vehicles, it even feels sometimes a bit small, though we must, let's see how fast they actually get traction. It always depends a bit on which market you look at. Norway, they have already gained quite some traction. There are other countries which are a bit slower. Now, who actually is pushing these frontier technologies? Not very surprisingly, China and the US are dominating the global landscape of frontier technology patterns. Like, China being in this role is a rather recent phenomenon. In our innovation indicator, you can see how China is catching up. Most countries either remain stable, or they lose a bit of ground, or they gain a bit of ground. But China has really, we measure it starting 2005, and you really see how it has moved up the ranks, especially when it comes to key technologies, what we are talking about here. And why is China so strong? It's basically, first of all, it's of course a big push from government. On the other hand, it's a bit of mixture of coordination and chaos, organization, or top down and bottom up. Because in China, China is less of a monolithic block as we in the West often tend to perceive it. It's not just the central government, but the provinces with rather strong governors as head of them. And they have these decades ago started with these special industrial zones where special rules applied, and that all set free a lot of creativity. And especially in the new technologies, China was able to do what we call leapfrogging. Like they basically jumped over like one technology. I think one of the best examples is actually electric vehicles. China is not so really good at building vehicles with combustion engines. Other countries, other economies, other companies have like 100 years of experience doing that. They have optimized it step by step. And in China, just building that from scratch proved to be quite difficult. But building electric vehicle know-how from scratch, they did that quite well. And the same applies to digital services, where they didn't develop or didn't concern with the stuff we currently are trying to optimize, but they built something new. On the same, or to also counter that argument a bit, it's also when we look at these statistics where China is so dominating. Let's see a look at the global country share of patents. You have here almost 50%, here more than 50% from China. That's also a bit of an overstatement, because China, that's again this top down versus bottom up, they basically strongly incentivize patents. And this means the number of patents. So there is a really, really high incentive to register a patent, no matter how relevant it is or how small it is. And this has basically led to the numbers of Chinese patents to be inflated quite a bit. So only looking at patent numbers gives a bit of a wrong picture, but be assured China is strong, and especially here in this green and renewable energy frontier technologies, which also, again, the current geopolitical situation often makes us forget about that, but it can be beneficial for many other countries as well. We have this discussion in Germany always. We had a solar or PV industry here, but then basically we stopped throwing money at them. China did continue throwing money at the industry, which basically meant all the production went to China. But they produced photovoltaic technology so cheap that it, of course, also gave a huge push to the installment of photovoltaic across Europe and the US. So, of course, it's this industry is gone, and it would take billions to reinstate that in Germany. And I wouldn't recommend doing that, but it has given a great push for renewable energy. And this is why basically, while I tend to have a very optimistic view on how technology helps us and innovation is beneficial for everyone, the geopolitical barriers that are currently being erected will be a brake on the speed of innovation. At the same time, you see like the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act in the US, or the Green Industrial New Deal in the European Union, and so on. They are trying to push investment, green investment, new investment. But in addition, what would really help would be continuing with global value chains. So let's see how that continues. Here again, you have an overview that gives a bit of flavor how important China is regarding different fields of technology. And again, we also see that when we look at our own innovation indicator, where the different countries lead, and China has really caught up. Especially if we look at this part of technology. AI has been around for quite some years now. We have a corporate magazine, or Think Act magazine, and I think in 2018 it had the title AI Am, Therefore AI Think. But of course it made a huge jump, the whole technology. I have to give you just a flavor how much it has intruded into our lives. I have asked artificial intelligence to create a picture on today's presentation, because while previously artificial intelligence, for example, could help you, like if you were a big institution and you had a lot of letters coming into your office, you could have this machine that scans all the letters, and then an AI could be trained to sort these letters and send them to the right person. So you could speed up the whole process, you could reduce errors, and people who would basically be doing this could do something which makes more sense for them. But now we have generative AI, which can write text, and you can basically chat with that AI, and which can also build pictures. So I basically told the AI, please show me a picture which is futuristic and cool, and please write, because this is the title or the publications we have, Trend Compendium 2050. This is actually what it came up with. Now, we can discuss a bit whether, this is futuristic enough, whether there's enough technology, or whether it is just a random city with skyscrapers with a just more sci-fi feeling. And what is even more interesting, I'll go back again. I asked for a center title named Trend Compendium 2050. Well, where is it? Where is it? So it's we are not there yet. We are not there yet. But still, of course, AI is on the stage. And in the previous version of the Trend Compendium, we built that in 2020. And we had a similar slide where we also had expert survey results. And there was one information piece was experts believed that an AI system could write a New York Times best-selling book in 2045. Even then, I was a bit skeptical because GPT was around back then. It was just not public, and I thought this should work out faster. And actually, who now believes it will take that long until an AI will write a New York Times best-selling book, or will be prevented by doing so because of regulation? So take these expert assessments with a bit more than just one grain of salt, because this is a technology that is moving fast. And we are just trying to understand what it actually is able to do. Now, let's first take a look. What do we see here? The question the experts have been asked was, when will unaided machines be able to accomplish every task better and more cheaply than human workers? This is, of course, a huge if. Still, half of the experts, now all these lines, each line represents like one answer from an expert, and you see that half of the lines are before 2061, and the rest is, of course, quite late. But this already gives quite a bit of a flavor when we think it's really every task better and more cheap. I would be right of one of the lines more to the right. I think these tools are really powerful, but while we are just understanding how powerful they are, at the same time we are also learning about their limitations. One thing that I find really astonishing is that these large language models are particularly bad in mathematics, like using them to multiply 3-digit numbers. They give you a wrong answer 50% of the time, wrong answer. This is something which you can, like a pocket calculator, can easily do that. And one should think that after a bit of training, a language model, which is of course trained to do a probabilistic assessment of which word should come next, but still they also do a lot of statistics and coding and so on. But mathematics, like in really the realm of logic, it does not work. It does not work, and it's also not fully clear why. It's like professors of mathematics and so on. They are looking into that. So we need to monitor this technology closely, and we should embrace it, because it's already out there, and not embracing it would be the biggest mistake we can make. We actually asked different AIs on what the future holds for AI, and functioning as they function, these large language models basically give you a rather good assessment of what's out there in the world on assessments regarding artificial intelligence. Of course, all of them start with the future of AI looking bright, which I would say, yes, it's correct. It will be more integrated into our daily life. It will improve the way we live, and it will be used to automate tasks, which is all like the second point they made. I think that's also true. Like the last point, BART AI. BART is the Google AI. It is likely to continue to evolve and become even more powerful in the years to come. Yeah, that's also a prediction, which is, I would say, you can easily make without being wrong. I think OpenAI gives a bit of a more interesting answer here about the potential negative impacts of AI, including job displacement, privacy concerns, and bias in algorithms. Actually, I would say these are just part of it. Job displacement, yes. Privacy concerns, yes. Bias in algorithms, yes, absolutely. But they also can be misused. Of course, they have limitations. These large languages have limitations, like that if you tell them, please build me a step-by-step approach how to commit a crime, they will tell you that they don't assist you in committing a crime. But what is currently being done is that you build agents that are trained to prompt these large language models. So you basically give your agent a task, and then it will iterate and go on a learning journey and split your task into several smaller tasks, into prompts, which the large language model will answer. And your agent will basically put it together again. So asking an AI how to commit a crime, it's actually possible. And not even that, you can also more or less mandate it. Tell the agent to commit a crime. Think of, there's one example who's someone who used such an agent to misuse a language model to do a bot attack, or let's call it a bot attack, to increase the ranking of a random page in Google search. Usually Google is very good in it by detecting which page hits are just created by bots. And it basically filters these out to really give a good assessment of what people are Googling and what they are searching for. And now you can, without too much knowledge, use an agent who misuses a language model to manipulate Google search. Now, I guess Google is also quite quick with these things, so there will be a race, who is ahead, but the potential for misuse is big. And that was also what was in our survey. Now, what's ahead for the interaction between humans and machines? When we look back, we basically started with the humans just controlling the hardware, like when you had these cards that you had to enter into big calculation machines. Then the graphical user interface was introduced, like the Windows from Microsoft, where you could click. The mouse was used. Then we moved on. We could here's it. Use our touch screen to navigate. Then increasingly it was changed to virtual reality. Now we are using chatbots who you can really talk to. But there's more to come, and we can already foresee some of those. Like biomechanical enhancement. What is biomechanical enhancement? Of course, it sounds a bit strange, but very practical. Think of an exoskeleton, like a machine, for example, for people who take care of elderly people, for example, who lie in bed, you have to turn them around, which is quite a heavy job. And which actually a robot, we wouldn't trust a robot easily to turn us if we cannot move much in our bed, to turn us around. And for example, an exoskeleton can help the caregiver lift people and turn them around with really human hands, but which are supported by a machine that you basically wear. What is effective computing? Effective computing is basically a machine that can really understand and simulate human emotions. Now, the AI bots that we currently have are faking it, but they are not really there. But it will come. Also, this is again what brings us back to Elon Musk. He's working on it, on the brain-machine interfaces, because currently we are using input like voice, gestures, fingers to interact with machines. In the future, we might use our brains directly by controlling them by thought. It's already possible, but currently it's very expensive and rather complicated. It's sometimes used for people who, for example, cannot move their hands, and it's doable. But this might be another way where our interaction with machines will change. Now, this is just a bit more, this slide, how do we interact like physically or with our brain? But the bigger question, of course, what will it do to us? And what will it do to our society? And actually, the views on AI are already quite mixed. You already have people who are starting to warn that AI may actually become out of control and that we need to regulate it. There was also a question in the survey upon this, and like the big majority of you said we need to regulate and monitor it. I was actually among the few who said let the free market do it, though I must say we will need both. I think when it really comes to creating innovation and technologies, I think we will have a hard time doing it without the spirit of creativity that the free market brings with it. But each new technology poses challenges, and each technology always means there's regulation. Like very easy, think of traffic. Why have we traffic rules? Because the car was invented. Before that, it was simply not needed. But without these rules, we all, I think, agree a car would be rather useless. Because when there's no rule, and when you always run the risk of dying because there's no rule preventing someone like driving in your lane right into you, it would be too dangerous. So I wouldn't even say that these are opposite sides. Like, do we trust the free market or do we regulate it? We will need both. And actually, this is also what AI experts want, because it gives them also a framework to operate in, and they will also know their product will be less successful if it goes wild, because regulation always channels a product for better use if done right. We have built a slide that gives you a bit, a flavor of what different concerns there are. I think job loss is something which is quite interesting. We are currently doing a study on the impact of generative AI. We did a survey among, to be honest, we mainly asked knowledge workers. And they said, yes, it will increase productivity, but we won't reduce headcount. I can believe that in markets where you have labor shortage, because you even now have trouble like getting the job done. But honestly, if it's really such a huge increase of productivity, will we really manage without any job loss? Not sure. On the other hand, I trust that it won't be like that. We won't be seeing like a huge job loss, but the job will change, and when jobs change, the job markets change as well. We have, of course, here this human agency thing. I guess that's also something that might be a bit problematic. It reminds me a bit of when Karl Marx in the 19th century said when humans are working in a factory, just like doing stupid things with the machines, it estranges them from their work. And we might make a similar argument for knowledge workers now. But as in 19th century industrialization society, there will be counter movements. So we will see movement, we will see turmoil even. But I'm quite sure we cannot stop a new technology once it's there. We need to find regulation that helps them to put them to the best use. And if we try to really like stop the technology entirely, we will hurt ourselves and we will fail. Now, these were basically our glimpse of what to look out for when we are talking about the future and the future of technology. I thank you very much for staying with me. And now over to you, Andreas, again.
Thank you very much indeed, David, and that deserves a big round of applause. So thank you very much. Now, that was great. I think that has raised so many questions. But before, and certainly there's lots of questions for me in terms of where we're going to go with artificial intelligence and AGI and where that's going to end up and whether it's all about our feeling of being in control or not. That's really at the heart of all of this. But before we do that, shall we go and do the quiz one more time? Let me just share the screen and see whether people have changed their minds. So bear with me. Let me just go back. Don't vote yet. I need to go back to the beginning. Let me just do that. It's probably easier. Let's see if I can do this one. Oh no, it's taking me back to the same one. Sorry about that. Ollie, might need to come upstairs and help me with this. Oh, here we go. That should be there. Okay, let's try this. More advanced technology results in a better standard of living for all, inequality, machines doing all the jobs we don't want to do, or job losses. So we've got three. Okay, we've got 10 so far, so we'll keep it running for a bit longer. Okay. It's interesting. So we've got 30 odd participants again, and actually, on balance, apart from 16% saying it's inequality, it's actually seen as a positive in terms of advanced technology. We had something about job losses there previously that seems to have dissipated in the rerun. It's just as I mentioned it, somebody else was determined to get in. All right, let's move on to the next question. Technology advances should be regulated and monitored or left to market forces to decide. I think David was expressing opinions there, so let's see what people think. Nobody's saying anything.
Not come up yet. Pull up the old question.
Okay. So if it's not going to come up, then we can have a show of hands in the room. Let's do that if it's stuck. So how many people think it needs to be regulated and monitored? Hands up. Okay, hands down. And how many people think it should be left to market forces? 1, 2. Okay, I think that's pretty clear. So let's see whether the last one works. Have you got that now or not? Is it coming up on the phone? Artificial intelligence will be a force for positive change, an existential crisis, threat to humanity, ruling the world, or force for positive change. Okay. Wow, okay. That's interesting. That's interesting, very interesting. So I think 35 people, but by far it's up to us. So it's up to us in terms of how that manifests itself. So I think that's really helpful, and it's been very good to have that. All of the polls we've run so far, we've got on record. So we'll share that with all of you who've booked online once the series is finished, just to be able to see that. The other thing we'll do is we'll send out the slides that you've seen today, because I think David covered this really well, but obviously there's so much information on the slides that you might want to catch up on afterwards. And it will also introduce the final speaker next week when we talk about artificial intelligence. But David, thank you once again for an excellent presentation in terms of what the future might hold for technology and innovation. I'm going to throw it up open to the audience in the room first, and then I'll go online. And for those of you who are online, please feel free to unmute and show your screens now if you want to ask a question later on. So I will start in the room. Who wants to ask first? The only thing you need to do is you need to talk directly into it like this, because otherwise the Zoom audience won't be able to hear you.
Thank you. Thank you for a very interesting talk. I wondered if you could say whether you envisage that there will be any important ways that our quality of life will be improved by 2050, and if so, what are they?
Did you get that, David?
Yes. I got that. Well, maybe let's pick an example where I would say we can already foresee a bit how our quality of life might improve. Let's look at connectivity, because there we already see a bit ahead. That was actually the slide I skipped because it was I thought it was a bit too complex. It was the one on space and how we basically will be using more low Earth orbit technology to have better connectivity, and how we can help connect more people across the globe, and how 6G will deliver more download speed. That all, and I'm also part of these people who sometimes you get the feeling, yeah, whatever, it helps people to download stupid videos from the internet even quicker. So how does it improve our quality of life? But if we are honest, connectivity enables so many things that we often forget that how they have improved. Like one example is how do you treat people like who had an accident or who are sick, who are ill, in areas which are less populated, and where you might end up not having a doctor. And this whole telemedicine thing, this whole remote care and remote diagnosis and so on, can only work if you have strong connectivity. Now, strong connectivity in cities is easy. Strong connectivity in rural areas is difficult. Technology helps us with that. And being able to not die because you're in a rural area is a big improvement of quality of life. Just as technology, look at the past 100 years, because when everyone says, yeah, but what the car, it just meant we are faster and that we are overwhelmed by all the technology. But I always say, yes, true. But look at the quality of life. Look at the improvements we made. You may know, what's his name? Hans Rosling? I think it's Hans Rosling, this Swedish doctor who wrote this factfulness book. He also has this strong story where he talks about, I think, his mother being in a hospital and how far developed Sweden was back then. Mark my words, Sweden, something which is usually like one of the most developed countries in the world. And just a few generations back, it was even unthinkable for us today how backward, so to say, it was simply, but it was then. And it shows not how backward we have been then, but how much improvement have we made. And if you think that goes on, and there's still so much ground left to cover, so I'm optimistic, and it will improve our quality of life simply by helping us not to die for bad reasons.
Excellent.
Like
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I mean, certainly the one that I'm looking forward to, David, as you mentioned, is an exoskeleton. I'm a multiple sclerosis sufferer. So I think an exoskeleton for me would be fantastic. I could just move smoothly around the room. Anybody else in the room before we go on to online? Anybody got a question in the room? Ah, right. Gentleman back here.
Thanks very much, David, for a really interesting talk. I'm an educator. I used to work in schools as a teacher. I now work in a museum as an educator. I'm really interested in what you think about how, for example, artificial intelligence might change or shape and maybe this is an unfair question to you, what we prioritize in our learning programs, in our education?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I'm of that generation. Basically, I finished school before Wikipedia was introduced. Back then we had, I think it was Microsoft Encarta. That was like the thing we had back then. And even then it raised questions. Like when teachers asked us, please handwrite something from the book, copy it from the book, or research something. And some smart guys just went home, threw in the CD-ROM and printed it. And I said, here, I did my homework. And then the teacher, of course, said, no, it's wrong. You're not supposed to do that. But she said, bring something to research, and I did. But I think it always means it usually some technology we will use, integrate into the learning experience. But in the end, we have never find a substitute for actually doing the hard work. We always have tools to help us. And I think it will be similar with artificial intelligence. You can already use it now, basically, to train people. Just ask them to research something with ChatGPT, which they know a lot about. And they will find out how prone to errors it is, actually, and that it might not be the best tool for researching. But then again, give them another task, ask them to, for example, translate something. And then suddenly you see, okay, here it works better. It's important to understand technology as a tool, and that means trial and error. And people who are educated, they should be educated how to use these tools. And of course, educators themselves must find out how to integrate these tools into their education journey.
Thank you for that, David. Another question, you mentioned Elon Musk, and what are the timeframes for transhumanism and posthumanism and that trend? Given that Elon Musk is looking at uploading consciousness, as he says, onto a quantum computer in the next decades.
Yeah, that's difficult to put a number on that one. I know that also this whole thing of longevity, there's a lot of hype going on in Silicon Valley with these funds and trusts that are built by billionaires who want to live like not forever but longer, and it's a lot of crazy things that they are trying out. But currently, like really transhumanism, we aren't even seeing real prototypes yet. So I think that's quite some years down the road. I would say it's after 2050. Yeah.
Good. Another question is, when will general AI become a reality?
General defined how exactly? General.
Well, I'm making this up now a little bit, but I suppose rather than doing individual tasks like artificial intelligence assembling a car, for example, being able to operate and act and do multitask like a human being would.
Yeah, I would say 1 year ago, we might have said after 2030. Now I would say we might not be that far away, depending on how general it will be. But we are already seeing astonishing tasks that are being done by these language models. And there are also other forms of AI. Also, for example, I talked about mathematics, which actually is a challenge for language models. But there are other forms of AI which are quite around for some time, which are suited for that. And you could combine it. So depending on how broadly you define general AI, I think we are moving quite fast. On the other hand, we should also not overestimate this progress. As I said, we're also learning just about the limitations. Of course, also to be quite sure, if you look how long takes it for adoption, like how long did it take Facebook to get like 1 million users? I think for ChatGPT, it was an hour from 1 million. It was astonishingly fast. It was really like adoption was like a rocket.
Okay, well, this actually is quite interesting for the next question. This is from Trevor. Doesn't history tell us that new technologies never develop as fast as predicted at the beginning?
I am not sure whether the
Apart from
never.
ChatGPT.
Yeah. Yeah, just as I said, it's usually the technology often is there, but then of course you have to put it to use, and then you encounter obstacles. You encounter obstacles, or you encounter threats, or both, which also means you might willingly stop it from developing further. Might be the case. You might try to slow it down. So I also perceive it to be, well, not a hype in a sense that it's not good, it's not important or something like that, but it's like not, some people talk like it's a superpower tool that changes everything. I doubt that.
Okay. Right, we've got still some questions online. Does anybody want to ask a question in the room? I don't want to leave you all out. There's somebody here.
Hi, David. Thanks very much for the talk. It may just be because I'm getting old. It does seem like the rate of change is accelerating. I was just wondering, from your perspective, if that's true, won't be all better in prospect. If that is the case, how long before the rate of change accelerates?
Yeah, David.
It was rather low volume, so I
think if I paraphrase it, is the change of progress is not linear; it's actually exponential. So how fast and significant will be the exponential growth in technology? Is that fair? Close enough. Okay. We're talking about Moore's law and beyond this.
Yeah, but I think it always depends. You can cherry pick data to make that point. On the other hand, do you still remember the hype about automated driving? No one's talking about it anymore because everyone experienced, geez, this is difficult. And suddenly, of course, they're continuously developing it, and cars are becoming better at handling many situations on their own. But many were predicting we would have like self-driving cars by 2026. And currently what we are seeing, everyone is becoming very cautious. So I wouldn't say that it's, for digital technology, it might be true. But like in general, I wouldn't say that we see this exponential development. No.
Okay. I've got a question actually for you based on what the gentleman just asked. Do you think we will always be in control of artificial intelligence? It sounds like a painful question, David.
Yeah, yeah, I'm just, what is under control? No, basically, I would say no. Every technology can get out of control, but that doesn't mean that we can somehow take back control. And when I say out of control, doesn't mean, maybe we are even out of control now, because we don't really know what this technology is capable of, and we don't know the limitations, which is out of control. But when we are thinking about like AI is going rogue and ruling the world, I would be careful with that. Hopefully I'm right.
Well, at least it might not have the human biases programmed into it. Anybody else in the room would like to ask a question? No? We'll go back online. And by the way, anybody online can unmute themselves and show the video, but I think people prefer the chat room. This is from Yvonne. Are governments already researching employment changes, i.e. reduction of hours, more vacation, as a new norm to deal with future job losses caused by AI?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess not just governments. Yeah, of course, everyone is looking at it. And on the other hand, there was, what was the name of these tools? guys from Oxford University. I think the study is almost 10 years old now. Osborne and Frey, was that the name? Who basically predicted, like, especially like this in the middle income bracket, that a lot of people would lose jobs. They even put a number on that. And I still think that's the best approach to it, to look at tasks which could be automated. But still, there was a lot of academic debate. So to be honest, if you ask me how high is the job loss, of course, if you force me to, I can give you some number, 5%, whatever. But I don't know how you can honestly really find that out. But I'm quite sure the effort is outgoing.
We've got Deepali has raised a hand. Do you want to unmute and ask your question, Deepali? No? Okay. We'll go on to the next question. Short-term reliance on AI makes sense as it learns from existing knowledge. What about the long term? What happens in 30, 50 to 100 years down the line if more and more output is output by AI and it ends up in a loop?
Yeah. This is, in my view, this is also the limitation we have. It cannot be a self-sustaining system without humans. At least that's my impression so far. There might be some AI evangelists who are like arguing that it will be even more creative than humans, but I doubt that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we haven't gone down the route of will AI ever be self-conscious, but another question is, how does innovation you have talked about not lead to greater inequality across the globe or even within local societies? Do you think it's a democratizing thing, or do you think it's the rich are going to be the purveyors of this innovation and the benefactors?
Yeah, but I think one must differentiate. On one hand, when we look at the globe, and if we look from a macro perspective, like countries, inequality has been reduced. Countries are moving closer to each other. But within countries, we also see that not everywhere, but sometimes inequality increases. But I wouldn't say that there's a causal connection, because there are simply too many other things, like the sort of society you live in, the sort of what economic system you have, what regulatory framework you have, so that innovation must automatically increase inequality. I don't see that.
Okay. And Deepali, you couldn't unmute. I've changed the security setting, so try it now and see whether you can unmute.
Oh, yes, it's worked.
Excellent.
My question was in the chat box, but you didn't, should I read it out?
Yeah, please do. I mean, I can't pick all of them, but please read it out.
Yeah, okay, I'm just looking for it. Yeah. Well, one of them was, what steps would we typically need to ensure regulation of the AI to prevent loss of control over them and over where AI could take us potentially? How can we, what typical measures can we think of?
Yeah, what is currently being discussed and most likely will be decided upon soon in the European Union is this AI Act. And they're basically what they try to do is they have categories of different things artificial intelligence does. So basically there's like a AI that translates. Yeah, that's basically unregulated. And then you have different steps. And for example, you can basically say there's a quality approval you must quality level you must assure as soon as your AI makes any decisions, like a decision on, I don't know, shall someone go on parole or whatever, in the justice system. I think even in the justice system, I think it's forbidden. They also have parts where they say it's forbidden to use an AI for this task. And this is basically, I think it's a decent approach. But of course, it also has limitations, because at the same time, you must prevent that you are ruling out innovation, because it will take place. And if we rule it out in the European Union, as an example, it will take place in different places. And we can either decide to use it from these other places, like the US or China, or not use it at all and be left behind. So it's tricky. It's tricky. And it's especially tricky to decide on which side to err on. Yeah. Am I a bit more too risky? It might be that my regulation is not effective enough, or is the regulation too effective and then I undercut innovation and will be left behind or need to rely on other technology.
David, thank you.
How do you weigh it up?
Yeah, it's in the end, it's an ideological question. There's no other way around. You cannot answer that scientifically. Yeah, and I think in the European Union they tend to err on the side of less risk, and which also means less innovation, and that will be a problem. Yeah, like it was with cloud. Data protection.
Personally, I'd like to hear the speaker's views or his personal views on which side he would err on.
Okay, well, which side would you err on before we move on from this particular question, David?
Yeah, we need innovation. We need innovation first.
Okay, that's fine. So, I mean, actually, whilst you're talking about this, this could be an interesting point. Has anybody at the European Union ever thought of asking AI to write its own regulation?
I guess so.
No, but you know, not that we enact it, but it would be interesting to see what it comes up with.
Yeah, absolutely. You can try it out.
Yeah.
Everyone who's at their computers, start your ChatGPT and just ask for a good
I'll send you the regulations over the weekend.
Yeah.
We've got another question in the room.
Thank you. Excellent talk. Very interesting. I was just wondering, I don't know if you know, there's an app, Snapchat, which recently implemented a chatbot whose sole purpose is to be your friend. Do you think that with more and more companies creating AI whose purpose is to be like a replacement for a friend, it could promote isolation instead of connectivity?
Yes, of course it could, like technology always can. But I was initially thinking of do you remember Tamagotchi? These little things, I think they were from Japan, where they simulated an animal and they could die if you didn't take care of them. Then you had to throw it away and buy a new one, whatever. So I think this is a question we always have. I would again point to, it's also a question for society. What society are we living in? And I think isolation is a real problem, but I wouldn't finger point too much at technology, because often I would say it just reinforces a societal trend. The political sociologist speaking here, by the way.
Good, thank you for that. I mean, this reminds me actually of the care industry in Japan, where they're using embodied AI to care for people in care homes. And repeated studies show that the people in the homes prefer the emotional contact with the embodied AI to a human being. And that says more about the human being than it says about AI. And I think this is what we need to bear in mind. Okay, well, we're coming on to the end now. Is there anybody in the room who wants to ask another question? I think we're out online. Give you a second now. Okay, we'll draw things to a conclusion then. I think, David, it's been really good. And I think the fact that you've actually looked at the three different dimensions of frontier technologies, technology and people, as well as innovation, I think breaks down a very complex subject into digestible formats. So I'm sure everybody will join me to give you another round of applause. Thank you, David.